They became the best duo in the nation, sold 30 million albums together, and took home every accolade imaginable. However, the true reason Brooks and Dunn broke up in 2009 was just disclosed by Ronnie Dunn. Despite what they said, it wasn't a burnout. At 72, with health problems and confronting his own mortality, he made the decision to speak the truth. Insiders in Nashville were shocked by what he stated about those latter years. Even Kix Brooks was taken aback by this. The revelation alters listeners' preconceived notions of the most fruitful collaboration in country music. Although it's said that music originates in the soul, Ronnie Dunn's music actually came from honky-tonks in oil fields and pews in churches. Ronnie, who was born in the small Texas town of Coleman on June 1, 1953, was torn between two worlds. His mother infused their home with conservative Baptist morals and gospel music, while his father was a rough-edged truck driver who played honky-tonk guitar. Ronnie was seeing his father perform in smoky pubs one minute. He participated in a church choir on Sunday morning the following day. His entire identity would be shaped by that peculiar harmony between the holy and the boisterous. There was more to it than background noise. A lifelong passion with music began at that time. But the plan did not include stability. It wasn't simply a few school changes for Ronnie. He attended 13 different schools in Texas and Oklahoma by the time he graduated because he moved so frequently. 13 new groups of friends, professors, regulations, and local radio stations were all part of that. A town could be considered rural. Another, centered around blues or gospel. It didn't break him to be uprooted so frequently. He was enlarged by it. Like trinkets, he collected up various styles and sounds. Every school introduced him to something new. It also provided him something that most artists never obtain: range. True. Range earned. The saxophone is something that most country musicians never play, yet Ronnie picked it up when other children were daydreaming about electric guitars. In order to learn how beats hit and melodies moved, he joined the band at his school. It was training, but it wasn't glamorous. After a long drive or a day in the oil fields, his father would return home exhausted but eager to teach Ronnie a few chords. It wasn't a schooling in music. Better. It was heart and real-world grit. For Ronnie, music was more than a pastime. It provided a lifeline. Even though he had two demanding professions, his father found time to play. The lesson stuck. Ronnie believed psychology might be his calling in the early 1970s. Abilene Christian University was his first choice, but his heart had other ideas. He was slinking out to perform in clubs, taking in the nightlife while singing to people who were elated and half-drunk. However, the university maintained rigorous rules. Not only did playing at bars go against the school's principles, he was expelled for it. It was that time. To be safe, he could have cleaned up and returned to school. However, he did not. He stepped up his music. Even if losing everything else was the price. However, that did not imply that he abandoned his beliefs. Ronnie led the music and served as the youth minister in a small aback church while he was still a student. He was doing more than just music. He led worship, gave them direction, and assisted them in experiencing a greater level of emotion. It was not only his voice that was affected by that encounter. His soul was molded by it. To him, gospel wasn't merely a genre. Home was there. His singing still conveys the pain, the optimism, and the fire. As early as the 1980s, Ronnie had moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa gave him fire, if Texas gave him his roots. There was a buzz in the city. Southern rock, blues, and country music were all mixed together in the crowded clubs like Tulsa city limits. Playing night after night, Dunn was right in the middle of it. Occasionally for gatherings of more than 2,000 people. It was hardly a glitzy affair. It was laborious. However, it was also the ideal environment for testing. A music was dead if it didn't make people want to dance. That's as easy as that. No curriculum could ever teach Ronnie what those dance floors did. The art of moving people. How to make them feel. Then the crazy twist appeared. At a service station in 1988, Jamie Oldacre, a drummer who had previously played with Eric Clapton and Bob Seger, noticed a Marlboro talent hunt form. He gave his name without even asking for Ronnie's. Despite initially not taking it seriously, Ronnie submitted a demo. Boots, Scootin' Boogie, and Neon Moon were all in preliminary form during that demo. He got to the finals. He triumphed. Nashville was the destination of that victory. And a session with producer Scott Hendricks for recording. And everything was altered by that session. Tim DuBois of Arista, whom Hendricks introduced to Ronnie, then matched him with Kix Brooks, another failing musician. That encounter was like a match made in heaven. In just 2 years, Dunn and Brooks were well known. However, years of rejection before the accolades, the arenas, and the #1 hits. It's Written All Over Your Face and She Put the Sad in All His Songs were two of Ronnie's singles released in the early 1980s after he signed with Churchill, MCA. At number 59, both peaked, not bad, but not good enough. Even though nobody seemed to care, Ronnie continued to work hard, write songs, and perform live despite the passing of those tunes. In 1990, two men in their 40s were on the verge of abandoning their professions as single men. Both Kix Brooks, a composer from Louisiana known for his boisterous energy, and Ronnie Dunn, a singer with a large voice and a spiritual heart who was born in Texas, had spent years striving for fame. They performed in little clubs, wrote songs for other people, and were repeatedly turned down. Neither of them knew the other. They had no desire to find a mate. But destiny had other ideas. In the same year, Tim DuBois, a record executive, noticed something that neither of them had. Perhaps, he thought, they would be stronger together than apart. Consequently, he set up a lunch meeting. They were both unwilling to attend. "We're not interested in doing this," Kix even stated. "Neither of us knows the other. This is just absurd, really." But then something clicked. What started off as an unpleasant meal into a songwriting session. Next, another. And they had composed 2 songs before the end of the week that would mark the beginning of their legacy. Brooks and Dunn released Brand New Man on August 13, 1991, and it was an immediate hit. The country charts saw 4 consecutive #1 hits. My Next Broken Heart, Neon Moon, Boots Scootin' Boogie, and Brand New Man. Neon Moon created a new hymn for heartbreak, and Boots Scootin' Boogie ignited a line-dancing frenzy across America. Over 7 million copies of the record were sold in the United States alone. Country music had never seen a debut like that, but it was just the beginning. Contrast was key to their success, not just catchy songs. With her emotive and silky voice, Ronnie could turn any ballad into a prayer. Grit was in Kix. Charisma and unadulterated strength. Despite the fact that they shouldn't have, their voices managed to blend together. Ronnie could light up a stage with Kix and a slow song. They combined to blend energy and emotion in a way that no one else could, spanning over 3 octaves. They even wrote quickly and energetically. They wrote A Brand New Man and My Next Broken Heart within days of our meeting. Ronnie was the only author of Neon Moon and Boots Scootin' Boogie. It seemed as though they had been searching for the ideal artistic match their entire lives and had now discovered it. Their honors increased in tandem with their notoriety. Over 30 million recordings were sold by Brooks and Dunn worldwide. Consequently, they became the most successful country duo in history and the best-selling pair in any genre. In addition to 18 Country Music Association awards, they took home 30 Academy of Country Music Awards. They only missed 1 year between 1992 and 2006, winning CMA Vocal Duo of the Year 14 times in a row. No one has ever been near. New performers appeared year after year, staked their claim, and failed to unseat Brooks and Dunn. They persevered like a mountain in a storm, enduring the shifting ebb and flow of country music. It wasn't luck. Dunn's voice, hard effort, and unadulterated ability filled every arena to the last row. Their numbers were as unbelievable. Together, they put out multi-platinum albums including The Long Haul and Brand New Man. Millions of copies are being thrown off the stores. The hits, too? There are 24 #1 songs. Not 10, not a few. My Maria made headlines in 1996. In 2001, Ain't Nothing About You became the most played song. Red Dirt Road wasn't merely a play. It reverberated across a generation. They ruled the radio with one hit after another. It seemed like a hit every time it was released. Ronnie Dunn did more than just sing. Delivering anthem after anthem, he was a machine. They weren't simply there when it came to touring. Tens of thousands of people gathered to take over. Every night, almost 20,000 people crowded the seats, yelling, singing, and anticipating the opening chord. Their shows took on a whole new dimension in the 2000s. Big stages, fireworks, and exuberant energy. It resembled a rock concert with a touch of country. Bands experienced it, not just attended. Their second home was sold-out arenas, and each tour seemed to be bigger than the one before. Dunn and Brooks disobeyed the regulations. They were rewritten by them. The ACM Triple Crown Award, which is even more uncommon, followed. Few people ever grasp it. Throughout your career, you must be the top vocal pair, top new artist, and entertainer of the year. That goes beyond success. That is the state of supremacy. Dunn and Brooks also did it. They met all the requirements for becoming the face of country music and for their first major break. This type of profession was uncommon. It started off strong and continued to rise. However, Ronnie wasn't content to stay in one lane. He collaborated with Sheryl Crow and Vince Gill on Building Bridges in 2006. It was more than just a team effort, it was magic. The way their voices blended together caused others to pause and pay attention. The song was a huge success, topping charts and winning accolades. Ronnie Dunn could compete with anyone. Pop or country didn't matter. There was no need for him to alter his identity. He simply brought his music and made it work with anyone dared to stand next to him. Despite the booming audience and stage lights, the strain was still increasing. Between 1991 and 2009, Brooks and Dunn put out 11 studio albums, issued 50 singles, and traveled virtually non-stop. By the end of the 2000s, it began to catch up. More than 30 million recordings had been sold, and they were taking home more than 75 awards overall. But it came at a hefty cost. Kix was tired, and so was Ronnie. They even started working with different producers and recording in different studios. There was no animosity there. The cause was burnout. In excess. It moves too quickly. For too long. On stage, they always had a cohesive appearance. However, they began to feel the strain of expectations off stage. Initially a strong collaboration, it grew to feel more like a business transaction. It was harder to make concessions. Separation was required. Fractures had begun to appear by the late 1990s. For years before they finally broke up, they were on the verge of doing so. Still, they continued. For the fans' sake, not their own. They endured the pressure because they were aware that millions of people valued what they had created. The world of country music was taken aback in August 2009. After over 2 decades of successful tours and successes, Brooks and Dunn declared their retirement. No arguments or controversies, just a subdued, enigmatic message. Now is the time to end the day. Supporters were perplexed. Business insiders were taken aback. After all, no other combo in history had won more CMA awards or sold more records than this one. Giants, they were. It seemed like the end of an era when they played their last gig in Nashville's Bridgestone Arena on September 3, 2010. Ronnie Dunn, however, saw it as more than just the close of a chapter. He had never anticipated the start of a personal storm. In the absence of the Brooks and Dunn name, Dunn was confused. He had moved in time with a machine for years. Repeat, tour, and record. The machine now stopped. He further stated, "Without the brand, I had no idea who I was." The silence was like getting off a moving train. Lights were absent for the first time in decades. No crowds, no security. His solo song was released, but it didn't feel the same. Everything started to seem suspect to him. His worth, his work, and his voice. The initially strong confidence began to erode. Subsequently, the rejection occurred. Once unable to get enough of him, country radio hardly listened. Fresh faces, fresh sounds, and younger names were now all over the charts. Dunn was no longer the most popular voice. According to one insider, radio wasn't hugging him, and that hurt a lot. Not because he was in need of fame, but rather because he felt unimportant. He referred to it as the lowest point in his career. It was painful for a man who had contributed to the development of contemporary country music to be marginalized. The quiet deepened. Being alone was strange and unpleasant for a man who was accustomed to being the center of attention. He said he thought it might be the end of it. That might be it, I thought. He answered, perhaps I already had my moment. He was frightened by that idea. Instead of writing for radio, he began writing exclusively for himself. In that silence, things started to change. He began to sound authentic and unadulterated in the music once more. And soul-filled. In 2011, Ronnie Dunn, who had been one half of the renowned Brooks and Dunn for decades, took a risk. He was the first person in his career to take center stage by himself. Ronnie Dunn, his solo debut album, was released on June 7, 2011. It burst instead of just making noise. The record immediately soared to the top of the Billboard Top Country Albums chart. And came at 5th place on the Billboard 200. Over 45,000 copies were sold in its first week. The lead single, Bleed Red, peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and became an unexpected hit. Dunn didn't write the song himself, which is even more shocking. It was uncommon. However, its message of healing, forgiveness, and unification struck a chord. America was still in the throes of a severe recession. The public wanted something truthful. Additionally, Dunn's voice retained all of its strength when he delivered it. To be safe, he pushed a little harder. His album Peace, Love, and Country Music was released in 2014. He accomplished it all according to his own terms. The album was crazy. Rock, blues, country, and even electronic dance music were all incorporated. Country, this was one of the songs with a dubstep drop. That was unexpected. When he sang Ariana Grande's hit song Tattooed Heart in 2016, 2 years later, he stunned everyone once more. Until they heard it, most people assumed it was a joke. Additionally, the record featured collaborations with longtime friends like Kix Brooks and Reba McEntire. He then published Redone in 2020. A tribute to his heroes in a covers album. Sung a variety of songs, including George Strait and Tom Petty. Every one of Dunn's 3 albums and daring swings demonstrates that he wasn't scared to upend country music, even if it meant upsetting some people. Most artists his age would never dare to take the risk he did to pull it all off. He left the major label system in 2014 and started his own label. Willie Records, Little. A minor personal homage encased in a significant professional risk, the moniker was inspired by his father's nickname. Dunn, however, needed independence, not simply wanted it. Having his own label gave him complete creative control. Executive approvals and corporate filters are absent. He avoided traditional outlets in favor of digital distribution, reaching fans directly. It was a drastic action. Notably in Nashville, but it was effective. His freedom allowed him to be creative and free from constraints. Nothing about the solitary road was simple, though. Dunn struck a brick wall with his debut album. He had collaborated with Arista Nashville for years, but the label underwent a significant reorganization. Dunn now lacked the same influence in terms of promotion. On country radio, he was seen as a newbie. The programmers who had previously commended him now ignored him. At the age of 58, he was beginning anew in a cruel industry that was fixated on youth and trends. He failed to receive airplay despite his name, voice, and background. It was a harsh reality. Being famous does not keep you from being forgotten. Following their 2010 breakup, Brooks and Dunn were done. But in December 2014, a change occurred. The country music industry was taken aback by a shocking revelation. Reba McEntire would return to Las Vegas with Kix Brooks and Ronnie Dunn. Together in Vegas was the name given to it. When the spectacle debuted in June 2015 at Caesars Palace's Coliseum, it seemed as though time had stopped. There was still chemistry between them. More powerful than before. To witness it, people flocked in. The event sold over 300,000 tickets and generated over $50 million in revenue by 2017. They weren't only concertgoers. History was being rewritten in front of them. Rolling Stone even praised the show's electrifying nostalgia. It wasn't only a return. They made a statement, and other country music artists were able to follow them to Las Vegas. They went further than that. In 2019, they took a risk that most legends steer clear of. They made a different sound. The title of the record was Reboot. They recreated past hits rather than rehashing them, and they weren't alone in doing it. They introduced a new generation, including Thomas Rhett, Kane Brown, Luke Combs, and Casey Musgraves. Every song was an original rendition of a timeless tune, combining current country sheen with vintage twang. It succeeded, but it was hazardous. On the Billboard Top Country Albums list, Reboot peaked at number 1 on April 20, 2019. In 10 years, that was their first number 1 album. It sold nearly 21,000 units in its first week of operation. Every day, millions of streams came in. Critics praised it. It was dubbed a masterclass in musical innovation by NPR. And all of the fans, new and old, were instantly unified by a single sound. Dunn and Brooks weren't just returning. They were larger than before. The honor they had long deserved arrived that same year. Their induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame took place on October 20, 2019. Now, their names were inscribed alongside icons like Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash. Both Brooks and Dunn refrained from crying during the ceremony. From little performances in Nashville to the largest venues worldwide, it had been a lengthy trip. But the figures were clear. They have sold over 30 million records, had 20 number 1 hits, and won a record 17 CMA Vocal Duo of the Year awards. What they had done was unmatched by any other country duo. And now, their historical position was undeniable. The music of the 1990s and 2000s was influenced by their style, which was a combination of rock, honky-tonk, and radio-friendly pop. They were symbols that evening, not just stars. They did not disappear as the years went by. They returned with Reboot 2 in 2024. The concept was the same, modern performers reenacted classic hits. Neon Moon, a melancholic duet with Lainey Wilson that caught fire, was one particularly notable. Once more, the album pushed limits. And everything worked just as previously. They astonished everyone by winning Vocal Duo of the Year again at the 2024 CMA Awards. They won the category for the 18th time. One more album. For 5 years, most artists are not able to remain relevant. Dunn and Brooks had done it for more than 30 years, and not by being cautious. They took risks, changed, and continued to develop. That's what maintained them at the top of a field that moves quickly and forgets things even more quickly. However, their influence may extend beyond the stage. Their role has changed in the last few years. Mentors. Ronnie Dunn has been vocal in assisting up-and-coming artists in achieving success. It has also been more than simply discussion. They have given tours to newcomers. They have worked along with them. When no one else would have given them a platform, they did. They started the Brooks and Dunn Next Generation project in 2023. It provided artists attempting to succeed in a challenging industry with resources, guidance, and support. Not only did they want country music to expand, but they also wanted it to include a wider range of voices, faces, and narratives. They were referred to be leaders by Rolling Stone not only because they sold records but also because they created opportunities for others to succeed. Ronnie Dunn never imagined that his life would end in a hospital bed in December 2024. However, at 72, what was supposed to be a leisurely Colorado ski vacation became a nightmare. He came down hard. The injury was so severe that a total knee replacement was required by the doctors. The procedure took 12 hours. His daughter Haley shared a video of her father taking a walk on social media just 30 minutes later. He made a joke on the internet while still high, attempting to look happy. "Perhaps I ought to change. I don't dance to I probably shouldn't ski anymore at the age of 72. But a real blow was hidden underneath the humor. He had to call it all off. The doctors gave him stringent directives. For 8 weeks, no singing, no traveling, and no stage. Fans were taken aback. A few weeks prior, Brooks and Dunn had received their 15th CMA Award for the Vocal Duo of the Year award. Currently, half of the group was relearning how to walk. Something was wrong when he returned to the stage in April 2025. Ronnie abruptly stopped singing Boot Scootin' Boogie in the middle of the encore on April 3 during a sold-out event in Indianapolis. He gestured and stroked his chest after saying, "Sing it if you know it," while glancing out at the audience. And left. No goodbye. Not a word. Online, a TikTok video of that precise moment became viral. He had reported having difficulty breathing earlier that evening. A few weeks prior, at a presentation in Texas, he discussed his recovery from strep throat and COVID-19. That night's crowd commented that he appeared exhausted. During songs, some people saw that he was seated. For a man who is known for his constant movement on stage, this is unusual. Even though the tour continued, it was clear that he wasn't feeling well. As it happens, he wasn't only recuperating from surgery. He was battling 2 infections at the same time. He was simultaneously afflicted with strep throat and COVID-19 in early 2025. For nearly 2 weeks, he was unable to sing a note. He was on voice rest, steroids, and antibiotics. Nor did the respiratory issues improve. He still hadn't entirely recovered by March. "I'm still fighting some respiratory issues from COVID," he acknowledged in one interview. Being struck by both viruses seemed like the cosmos was against him at his age, following knee surgery. The fans were concerned. Supporting messages began to be posted by fellow musicians. Everyone was aware of the rarity of both conditions occurring simultaneously, and how risky it can be. Fans started to notice something that hadn't occurred in 30 years of Brooks and Dunn performances as spring progressed. Ronnie Dunn sat down. Lots. Videos from their 2025 gigs show him catching his breath while leaning on speakers and sitting on chairs. Even the crowd took notice. People posted on social media that he was in pain and that he had muscled through it. He also seems to be out of breath. These were more than just bad evenings. This was a different Ronnie, one that was slower, quieter, and more frail. He kept appearing, though. He persisted even after his legs failed him or his voice cracked. He finally said anything. In online interviews, he was honest with his fans. Even though he was still recovering, he was not giving up. He committed to singing for as long as he could. He expressed gratitude to his family, his staff, and the supporters who remained by him. Many people found that honesty to be more impactful than any performance. He wasn't merely pushing through the agony. He allowed others to witness it. Their love for him grew as a result. Ronnie has always had a strong support system behind the spotlight, his family. In 1990, he got married to Janine. Brooks and Dunn were born in the same year. They have raised Whitney, Harley, and Jesse together. Their grandchildren number 5 as of 2024. He stays at the Barn, a 600-acre farm close to Nashville, while he's not on tour. He arranges large family meals, fishes, and observes baby eagles there. His escape. His pillar of support for decades has been Janine, who was widowed before she met him. Janine encouraged Brooks to pursue a solo career during the time that he and Dunn were taking a sabbatical. It wouldn't have worked without her, he's always claimed. Their bond grew much stronger after their daughter beat cancer. It's uncommon for someone in music to remain grounded despite all the celebrity. His career as a musician speaks for itself. 24 number 1 hits, 30 ACM awards, and more than 30 million albums sold. The Hall of Fame. In 2025, he will be inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, and the Arkansas Entertainers Hall of Fame. Every time, he stands in astonishment, feeling humbled, thankful, and frequently moved. In one statement, he even expressed gratitude to his therapist. For Ronnie, it has always been more than simply the music. He developed a second passion for photography. The Lensman Project is more than simply a pastime, it's a serious aspect of who he is. He photographs nature, cowboy life, and open-air planes. Magazines, galleries, and even the Country Music Hall of Fame have featured his photographs. He began contributing a portion of the sales to the American Cancer Society when his daughter was diagnosed with kidney cancer. He was outside more often with a camera than a microphone during the pandemic, and he somehow found solace in the silence. He has recently focused his attention on mental health. He has discussed fatigue, stress, and breaking points candidly. He didn't hide after retiring from that stage in April. He spoke about it. He claimed he needed to sleep. It made other musicians pay attention. He participates in Heal the Music Day and advocated for the Music Health Alliance. And for someone who made a living on strength, it was his candor that demonstrated to others what true strength looks like.